You stand on a stretch of land that smells like rotten metal. The locals call it cursed ground. Black liquid seeps through the soil in slow, ugly bubbles, staining boots and livestock alike. Farmers complain that it poisons wells. Merchants laugh when you ask about it. No one sees value here. They see inconvenience. You see friction. You live in a world powered by muscle, wood, wind, and whale fat. Cities burn whale oil to light their streets. Ships cross oceans chasing whales because illumination is worth slaughter. Forests fall so homes can stay warm through winter. Energy is physical. It must be hunted, chopped, hauled, or bred, and every unit of it demands labor. That is the system you were born into. Energy equals effort. Effort equals cost. Cost equals limitation. You start to notice something others ignore. This black liquid burns longer than whale oil. It burns brighter. It doesn't require harpoons, fleets, or seasons. It sits beneath the ground in silent abundance. The problem is not whether it works. The problem is that no one believes it matters. You are not fighting geology. You are fighting imagination. At first, your trades are small and almost embarrassing. You purchase land that others abandon. You negotiate mineral rights from farmers who think you are eccentric. You store barrels in crude wooden sheds near muddy fields. There is no established market, no commodity exchange listing, no futures contracts, only belief. You begin refining the substance in basic distillation units. The early results are inconsistent. Sometimes it explodes. Sometimes it smokes too heavily to be useful indoors. Investors you approach shake their heads. They prefer railroads. They prefer steel. They prefer anything that already has momentum. Momentum feels safer than potential. But you understand something structural. Whale populations are thinning. Cities are growing. Factories are multiplying. If illumination becomes scarce, productivity stalls. And if productivity stalls, expansion stalls. You are not trading oil. You are trading future capacity. The breakthrough does not arrive as applause. It arrives quietly. A cleaner, burning derivative emerges from refinement. It lights rooms more steadily than whale oil. It costs less once scale increases. Word spreads, but not explosively, slowly, practically. Shopkeepers adopt it first, then small manufacturers, then municipalities experimenting with street lamps. Demand begins whispering before it starts shouting. Now your problem changes. It is no longer about belief. It is about logistics. Oil underground means nothing without extraction infrastructure. You finance drilling rigs that look fragile and improvised. Wooden derricks rise awkwardly against the sky. Some wells collapse. Some produce nothing. A few gush violently, flooding the ground in thick black rivers. You learn quickly that production volatility can destroy you. Too little supply and contracts fail. Too much supply and prices collapse. There is no stabilizing institution, no central authority coordinating output. Every driller wants to maximize short-term flow. Every speculator wants immediate return. You begin securing transportation routes, rail lines, river barges, storage depots near expanding cities. Control over transport becomes more valuable than ownership of wells themselves. Because oil trapped inland is useless. Energy must move. As factories convert from steam systems dependent on wood and coal supplements to oil-fed systems, efficiency improves. Maintenance costs drop. Urban lighting expands working hours. Productivity stretches into the night. You start noticing something else. Military officials are visiting refineries. They ask technical questions about burn rates and storage stability. They run calculations on naval ships. Coal-powered fleets require constant refueling stations and enormous manpower to shovel fuel into furnaces. Oil could change that. Fewer workers, longer range, faster refueling. You realize energy is not just economic leverage. It is geopolitical leverage. The world still does not fully understand what you are holding. But institutions with strategic foresight are beginning to. Your contracts shift from small merchants to industrial magnates. From magnates to governments. You are no longer arguing that oil burns well. You are arguing that oil scales well. Scale is the true advantage. Wood cannot scale without deforestation. Well oil cannot scale without extinction. Coal scales, but it is heavy, dirty, and slow to transport. Oil flows. You start buying not just land, but access corridors. rights of way for pipelines, agreements with rail companies, stakes in shipping firms. You vertically integrate before the term exists, because you understand that whoever controls the chain controls the price. Competitors emerge quickly once profits become visible. Speculators flood into the market. Wells multiply recklessly. Boomtowns appear almost overnight around productive fields. Taverns, banks browse, all fueled by sudden wealth. You resist the temptation to overproduce. You cap output strategically to prevent price crashes. Others call you cautious. You call it survival. Then volatility hits. A wave of new wells floods the market. Prices plummet. Smaller operators collapse under debt. Investors panic and withdraw capital. Newspapers declare the oil craze unsustainable. You do not panic. You acquire. Distressed assets become your expansion tool. You purchase wells for fractions of their development cost. You consolidate transportation networks under unified contracts. You negotiate exclusive supply agreements with growing industrial firms. You are not playing the quarterly game. You are playing the structural game. As engines evolve, a new derivative of oil becomes critical, refined fuel capable of powering internal combustion systems. Early engines are experimental, noisy, unreliable. Most people dismiss them as curiosities. You recognize the pattern. Every transformative energy shift begins as an inefficient novelty. Steam once looked unstable. Railroads once looked dangerous. Now engines powered by refined petroleum hint at mobility without rails. If vehicles no longer require tracks, cities redesign themselves. Trade routes reshape. Individual movement expands beyond fixed lines. You increase refining capacity, focus just on illumination fuels, but on combustible motor fuels. Risk rises again. You are allocating capital toward a demand curve that does not yet exist. But you have seen this before. First disbelief, then mockery, then gradual adoption, then dependency. When the first large-scale automotive manufacturers begin requiring steady fuel supply, you are already positioned. Your storage depots are near urban centers. Your transport agreements reduce bottlenecks. Your pricing remains competitive because you survived the collapse that wiped out impatient entrants. Now the world understands oil matters. But by the time understanding arrives, positioning is already decided. Governments begin mapping foreign territories not for gold, but for petroleum reserves. Naval doctrines shift from coal bunkers to oil storage tanks. Industrial expansion ties directly to energy access. Nations without oil feel exposed. You observe something unsettling. Energy ownership determines foreign policy. Conflicts start aligning suspiciously with resource maps. You are no longer just a trader. You are a participant in the architecture of modern power. Refineries grow larger. Pipelines stretch across states and borders. Financial markets begin formalizing oil contracts. Futures markets emerge to manage volatility. Risk becomes quantifiable rather than chaotic. What began as muddy land purchases becomes a globally traded commodity underpinning transportation, manufacturing, military strength, and household life. You reflect on the early days, when farmers laughed, when investors dismissed you, when barrels leaked beside wooden sheds. Nothing about the substance changed, only perception did. You realized the real trade was never oil, it was asymmetry. You saw structural inevitability before others saw relevance. You identified a resource that reduced labor per energy unit dramatically. You recognized that any society seeking growth would eventually prefer dense, transportable, scalable fuel. You endured volatility because you understood direction. Now step outside that era mentally. Replace oil with any emerging technology, artificial intelligence, renewable energy storage, biotechnology platforms, digital infrastructure. The pattern remains identical. Early-stage disbelief, technical instability, capital skepticism, logistical bottlenecks, volatility shakeouts, consolidation, institutional adoption, geopolitical entanglement, mass dependency. You lived through it once in crude form. You realized the lesson was not about drilling rigs or whale shortages. It was about identifying energy shifts before consensus forms. In your era, oil compressed centuries of muscle labor into liquid form. In any era, the winning position comes from recognizing what compresses effort most efficiently. You did not win because oil was black and combustible. You won because you understood that systems reward those who secure leverage before it becomes obvious. When the world finally declared oil essential, the margins were already thinner, competition already institutionalized, regulation already forming, entry barriers already raised. The outsized gains belonged to the uncomfortable years, the uncertain years, the years when you stood alone on land that smelled like rotten metal, staring at black liquid seeping through soil while others turned away. You were not predicting the future. You were studying constraints. Energy constrained productivity. Oil removed constraint. Once you saw that, the rest was timing and discipline. You learned to survive price crashes without liquidating core assets. You learned to integrate vertically to reduce dependency. You learned to negotiate long-term contracts instead of chasing short-term spikes. You learned that scale beats speculation. And most importantly, you learned that transformative assets look useless right before they look inevitable. Now, when you analyze any modern market, you ask different questions. Does this reduce effort dramatically? Does this scale beyond its niche? Is infrastructure the real bottleneck? Who controls transport and distribution? Who survives volatility? Those are the same questions you asked standing over black, stained soil. You were never just an oil trader. You were an early allocator of structural energy. And once you understand that pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. This is basically modern investing.